Good morning and buenos dias. I am Abu Sha'b and welcome back for another lesson in Puerto Rican expressions. This morning's lesson is not about Flavor Flav and the history of hip hop. It is about time expressions, words and phrases related to time in Spanish. We're going to start off with some basic vocabulary and then we're going to talk about some more complicated concepts when expressing ideas about time. 1 second in Spanish is un segundo. And most of this vocabulary is thankfully pretty logical. You don't get too many words that are well out of what you might think. 5 minutes, 5 minutos, 5 minutos. 12 hours, 12 horas. Esperamos allí por 12 horas. We waited there for 12 hours. Esperamos allí por 12 horas. We waited right there for 12 hours. 40 days, 40 días, 40 días. Llovió por 40 días y 40 noches en el diluvio de Noé. Llovió por 40 días y 40 noches en el diluvio de Noé. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights in Noah's flood. El diluvio de Noé. Diluvio is deluge. But this word is almost exclusively used to talk about Noah's flood, unless we're talking about some really massive flooding somewhere. Other flooding is referred to as inundaciones in Spanish. Inundación, singular, is a flood. Inundaciones is floods or flooding. Aviso de inundaciones would be flood advisory or flood warning. 52 weeks, 52 semanas in Spanish. You might hear 52 semanas. In many regional parts of the Spanish-speaking world, they drop the A from compound numbers and it's just 52 semanas. But I say 52 semanas. Hay 52 semanas en un año. There are 52 weeks in a year. 9 months, 9 meses. Un embarazo dura 9 meses. A pregnancy lasts for 9 months. Un embarazo dura 9 meses. A pregnancy lasts 9 months. 3.5 years. 3 años y medio. 3 años y medio. El Ministerio Público de Jesucristo duró 3 años y medio. The public ministry of Jesus Christ lasted 3.5 years. El Ministerio Público de Jesucristo duró 3 años y medio. Decade. A decade, no surprise here, it's una década in Spanish. A 10-year period, una década. Century, a little bit of a surprise because a 100-year period in Spanish is un siglo, un siglo. This word has no apparent relationship with cien, centurion, or century, or any of the other words that are based on the Latin word for 100. This word's kind of a freak. Now to ask what time it is correctly in Spanish, you ask, ¿qué hora es? You may hear people saying, ¿qué horas son? But this is kind of pidgin Spanish and it is not correct. ¿Qué horas son? What time is it? Let's say it's 1:10. 1:10 in Spanish, you express la una con diez. Many people say la una y diez. I prefer la una con diez because it's more clear. A little bit after 6 p.m. A little bit after 6 p.m. you could say a las 5:y pico de la tarde. A las 5. When we talk about the number of the hour, we always have to use a definite article la in front of one or las in front of the other numbers, 2 through 12 in this case. Las 6, las 5, las 7, las 8, las 9, las 10. If somebody asks you what time it is and you just answer 5:30, it sounds kind of clumsy. You have to say las 5:30, las 5:30. Las 6:y de la tarde, most people will say de la tarde or de la mañana instead of saying AM or PM. Of the morning or of the evening, de la tarde, afternoon. So, y pico is a little bit. This literally means end of bird's beak, but when we talk about the hour, it means a little bit after the hour. 9:52. 9:52 we can express in Spanish, las 10 menos 8. Las 10 menos 8. 10 o'clock minus 8 minutes. Minutes are implied. We can also say 8 para las 10. 8 for 10 o'clock. 8 for 10 o'clock. 8 para las 10. 8 for 10 o'clock. Also, when we're talking about the half-hour increment in Puerto Rican Spanish, let's say it's las 8:30. Media in Puerto Rican Spanish also means sock. It's calcetín or calcetines are socks in standard Spanish. But here in Puerto Rico, media is sock. So when you're talking in sign language or maybe you're too far away to hear somebody, you ask, what time is it? What time is it? They can answer you, las 8, and point to their sock, y media. I'd lift my foot up to the camera level, but I didn't go to my yoga class yesterday and I'm kind of stiff. So, when we talk about the date in Spanish, and we ask, what's the date today? What's today's date? What is the date today? We can translate this literally and say, ¿cuál, which? ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? Which is the date of today? ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? But most people will colloquially say, ¿a cuánto estamos hoy? ¿A cuánto estamos hoy? ¿A cuánto estamos is colloquial for what is today's date. ¿A cuánto estamos? What is the date? ¿A cuánto estamos hoy? What is today's date? ¿A cuánto estamos? At how many are we? ¿Cuánto estamos? Now, when we're talking about time in Spanish, we use the word el tiempo. When we're talking about time as a concept, like time and space. El tiempo y el espacio, time and space. El tiempo y el espacio, time and space. El tiempo also means the weather. A weather report is un informe del tiempo, un informe de tiempo. El informe de tiempo is the weather report. Clock. Clock in Spanish, for me, is a very unique word because it's the only word I know in Spanish that ends with a J, which makes an H sound, as most of us know in Spanish. So clock in Spanish is el reloj, el reloj. I always thought this word was related to Arabic, but as I study Arabic, I find that this word is just kind of a freak. So calendar in Spanish is el calendario, el calendario. However, here in Fajardo, Puerto Rico, many people colloquially say in the street almanaque when they mean calendar. Almanaque is almanac. It's kind of close, but it's not the same thing. It's more correct to say calendario. Right now in Spanish is ahora mismo, ahora mismo. In Mexican Spanish, you say the word ahorita, ahorita to say right now. However, ahorita in Puerto Rican Spanish and Caribbean Spanish means just a little while ago or very soon. When we express the idea of very soon in Puerto Rican Spanish, we usually say ya mismo, very soon, ya mismo. You don't really use the word pronto here in Puerto Rico as we do in many other countries, ya pronto, very soon, ya pronto. Soon in Puerto Rican Spanish is ya mismo, very soon, very soon. Right now, ahora mismo. While, a while, for a while, un rato. Now, I had a lot of trouble with this word. The first time somebody asked me if I needed something for mucho rato in Puerto Rican Spanish, mucho rato, I could not understand the person, and it took me a long time to realize what they were saying. Mucho rato, a long time. Mucho rato, a long time. Rato largo. Mucho rato, a long time. Ratito, a short time, a short while. Rato, mucho rato, a long while. Rato, while, a while. Now, while, mientras, while you were there. Mientras tú estabas allá, while you were there. Mientras tú estabas allá, while you were there. Mientras, while. Meanwhile, like meanwhile back at the ranch, is mientras tanto, meanwhile. Fortnight, a fortnight. Now, if it weren't for Shakespeare, I would have never heard this word, and I really only put it on the list as a joke at first, but when I looked it up, I found out that fortnight is a 15-day period in Old English. And coincidentally enough, I get paid every 15 days, which we call quincenal in Spanish. Quincena is a 15-day period in Spanish, which would be a fortnight, the Old English word. Now we say bi-monthly, but I get paid quincenal. I get paid on the fortnight. Me pagan a mí en el quincenal, in el fortnight. I get paid on the fortnight. Quincena. So, Lent, moving right along, Lent is la Cuaresma, the 40-day observance before Easter, Cuaresma. And a 40-day period in Spanish is cuarentena, cuarentena. Now we can see that this word is directly related to quarantine in English, which probably originally had a 40-day meaning to it when we talk about separating a sick person for medical observation for a period of time, separating them, isolating them. Quarantine, cuarentena. In Puerto Rican Spanish, la cuarentena is the period of waiting that a woman must wait after she gives birth before she can enjoy marital relations again. Cuarentena. Then, entonces. Then in Spanish is entonces. Entonces qué? Then what? Entonces qué? Then what? At that time in Spanish, at that time is expressed in aquel entonces. At that then. In aquel entonces, at that time. Your date of birth in Spanish is la fecha de nacimiento. La fecha de nacimiento. Fecha is the date, la fecha. Nacimiento, birth, the date of birth. La fecha de nacimiento. And the fairy tale starting once upon a time in Spanish is generally había una vez. Había is the past continuous of the verb haber. Había una vez, there was a time. Like 5 times, como 5 veces, como 5 veces. Yo me fui para allá como 5 veces. I went there like 5 times. Yo me fui para allá como 5 veces. Como 5 veces. Now, what's the one? From the beginning, from the beginning. Desde el principio, from the beginning, desde el principio. En el principio, the beginning, creó Dios el cielo y la tierra. God created the heavens and the earth. En el principio creó Dios el cielo y la tierra. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, when you say from the get-go in Spanish, it's desde un principio. Desde el principio, with the definite article, is from the beginning, but from the get-go is desde un principio. Me has estado chavando desde un principio. You've been on me, you've been messing with me from the get-go. Desde un principio. And always. Most people already know that always is siempre in Spanish. And happily ever after is felices para siempre. Felices para siempre. Happily ever after. Well, thank you very much for viewing. I hope you learned a few words about the time. And have a great day.